So in our last video, I was talking about starting a story, and I was saying that prose writers, as distinct from filmmakers perhaps, have a really short window in which to be clear about what their story is going to be about, who it's about, where it's going to take place. And also in those opening paragraphs, they have to pique the reader's interest. They have to probably give the reader a reason to care. It's a lot to do in just a few words. So today I want to have a look at what I think is a really successful opening to a short story, the first few paragraphs of Jhumpa Lahiri's A Temporary Matter. The opening line of that short story is, "The notice informed them that it was a temporary matter. For 5 days, their electricity would be cut off for 1 hour, beginning at 8 p.m. So straight away, we begin with an event that interrupts the stasis. And this tells us what the story is going to be about. It's a story about what happens during this power cut, right? So the story starts very much when it starts. Lahiri doesn't begin with a character walking home or watching TV or redesigning the garden. She starts by explaining the transformation that sets the story in motion. And she tells us the work would affect only the houses on the quiet tree-lined street within walking distance of a row of brick-faced stores and a trolley stop where Shobha and Shukumar had lived for 3 years. So now we know who the story is about and where it takes place. And we get from this description of place that the action's going to unfold in a more or less contemporary and realist suburban setting. We also can probably assume that because these people live together, the chances are that they're a couple. So by the end of the first paragraph, we already know that this is a story about Shobha and Shukumar, a suburban couple, and how their lives will be affected by these power cuts. Now the second paragraph begins, "It's good of them to warn us," Shobha conceded. And I think this is a really important piece of characterisation because I think it makes us like Shobha. Her reaction is generous, right? Yeah, it's understanding. She focuses on the positives. She doesn't rant and shout and moan and curse, "Oh, God, but damn these bloody electric people." But something is wrong. "It's good of them to warn us," Shobha conceded after reading the notice aloud, more for her own benefit than Shukumar's. She let the strap of her leather satchel, plump with files, slip from her shoulders and left it in the hallway as she walked into the kitchen. There's no, "Hi, honey, how was your day?" None of that sort of stuff. And we can immediately sense that there's some tension in their relationship. And so, crucially, the second paragraph introduces conflict. Next up, we get a wee introduction to Shobha. It says, "She wore a navy blue poplin raincoat over grey sweatpants and white sneakers, looking, at 33, like the type of woman she'd once claimed she would never resemble." Note that this description is only possible because Lahiri is using the third-person point of view. If it were a first-person account, Shobha couldn't describe her own appearance, right? And note that Lahiri uses this sentence to tell us another important piece of information, how old Shobha is. And I guess since we're not told otherwise, we can kind of assume that Shukumar is probably in roughly the same age bracket. Now, still focusing on Shobha's appearance, we move into Shukumar's perspective. "She used to look this way sometimes," Shukumar thought, "on mornings after a party or a night at a bar, when she'd been too lazy to wash her face, too eager to collapse into his arms." And this is a crucial line because it reinforces the conflict, but at the same time, it gives us a reason to care. You know, look how in love they used to be. What a tragedy that this love now seems to be lost, because now things are very different. She dropped a sheaf of mail on the table without a glance. Her eyes were still fixed on the notice in her other hand. But they should do this sort of thing during the day. And now, here I think is a superb line of dialogue. "When I'm here, you mean," Shukumar said. And something that I love about this is that neither of them can actually be bothered to pursue this argument. It's like it's a battle that they've fought so often, and they know how it would unfold, and they've just got no stomach for it. So it's just left hanging there. And it's also kind of like, Ernest Hemingway said about in a good short story, it's kind of like an iceberg where only the tip of the drama is visible and a lot more lurks below the surface. And we can imagine all the tension that lies behind this one line, this sense that Shukumar maybe feels that his time isn't equally valued by Shobha. And this is brilliant. He put a glass lid on a pot of lamb, adjusting it so only the slightest bit of steam could escape. Good writers, they're always trying to do as much as they can with every sentence. Here, Lahiri introduces food, which is going to be a major trope in the story, but there's also a symbolism to what Shobha does. He is literally letting off steam, just a tiny bit, just enough to stop the pressure bubbling over. So next up, we get a formal introduction to Shukumar. Since January, he'd been working at home, trying to complete the final chapters of his dissertation on agrarian revolts in India. We learn what he's been doing while Shobha's at work, what he does that perhaps Shobha doesn't fully value, and note the specificity. He's not writing a dissertation, he's writing a dissertation on agrarian revolts in India. As another example of specificity in the 5th paragraph, which begins, it says March 19th. Is today the 19th? Shobha walked over to the framed corkboard that hung on the wall by the fridge, bare except for a calendar of William Morris wallpaper patterns, and specifying that their calendar has pictures of William Morris wallpaper patterns helps to characterise them. We get a different impression of what these people are like than we would get if we were told that their calendar featured ice hockey players or bikini models or whatever. Now, I'm not saying this opening's perfect. I think that she looked at it as if for the first time, studying the wallpaper pattern carefully on the top half before allowing her eyes to fall to the numbered grid on the bottom. We might question the adverb of manner carefully. Like, can one study something in any other way? I'm not sure you really can. I think that studying already implies a degree of care. But I think this link is great. A friend had sent the calendar in the mail as a Christmas gift, even though Shobha and Shukumar hadn't celebrated Christmas that year. One idea joins to another one very smoothly. And with this, at the end of the 5th paragraph, here he's raising a question. She's intriguing us. Why didn't they celebrate Christmas that year? What happened? And note that she writes that they didn't celebrate Christmas that year. It's not that they just don't celebrate Christmas because, I don't know, they're atheists or Hindus or whatever. They normally celebrate Christmas, but for some reason that year they didn't. And the reason why is so awful that it can't be easily spoken. And it's not until a few pages later that the question is resolved. Their baby had been born dead. It's a very powerful story, and if you haven't read the full version, then I recommend you do. But the story's set up by these opening paragraphs. In these first 5 paragraphs, Lahiri gives us all the key information. Who the story's about, what the story's about, where it's taken place. She introduces conflict and gives it depth. She gives us a reason to care. We lament their lost love, and she piques our interest and makes us wonder what tragedy underlies that conflict. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your writing.